Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to this talk and getting involved with the Product Marketing Festival. We hope you've been enjoying the stages and the talks so far, and you're in for another good one right here. But before we kick things off, we just wanted to say a quick thanks to everyone who's helped make this festival happen. Sponsors, partners, attendees and speakers. Shameless but obligatory plug, and in case you missed it, we recently launched our very own product marketing certification. If you haven't already, check it out. Enjoy this session.
Hi, my name is Brian Sorley, and I'm the founder of Double Check Research. We're a win-loss and churn research firm out of Boston, and welcome to the Win-Loss Workshop. Like Superman, product marketers are crime fighters who seek truth and justice against superhuman villains. Those villains just happen to be your competitors. And just like Superman, product marketers have their own set of kryptonite, things that prevent you from doing your job, like product gaps, poor sales performance, confusion around pricing. The list goes on and on. So this workshop is not entirely about villains or kryptonite, but it is about seeking truth, the kind of truth that your team is really interested in learning through interviews with those people who know the truth, your buyers. Over the next 25 minutes, we're going to go through 9 specific areas. The first one is we're going to review a tool that you're going to use to build your win-loss program. It's called the worksheet. We're going to help you select your internal customers, those people who you're ultimately collecting information on behalf of. We're going to help you uncover what's most important to those stakeholders through a discovery process. We're going to help you identify what each stakeholder's primary learning objective is, what they're hoping to learn from the interviews and data collection exercise that you're going to be conducting. We're also going to help you come up with questions that align to the learning objectives that the stakeholders have shared with you, ultimately helping to make sure that the information you're collecting is well aligned with their use case and their objectives. We're going to help you identify how to drill down into the answers to the questions that you receive. We're going to help you look at how to conduct interviews at a high level, more what tools you should use when capturing interviews and transcribing them. We're going to go through an exercise around analysis and reporting, and then ultimately we're going to help you identify and capture stakeholder value at the end of your process. So let's get started. The first step is to open up your program worksheet, which is a Google Doc. On the left-hand side, you'll see a URL. It's bit.ly/2y4HOMZ. You're going to need this toolkit to be able to capture the information that we're going to talk about during this workshop. That link will be available later on at different times in the deck. The next step is we're going to look at who those people are that you're serving internally. And like Superman needs help fighting evildoers, you need help too in capturing information and sharing it in a way that's actionable. You have your league of stakeholders, and that includes product marketing, sales leadership, competitive intelligence, product management, and for those organizations who are looking at churn programs, customer success. Sales leadership is really eager to understand how their sales team is doing out in the marketplace. Are they able to handle objections, differentiate? Do they talk about pricing in a very transparent, clear, and concise manner? Customer success wants to know why people are renewing or not renewing. If somebody doesn't renew, was there something that customer success and that team could have done differently to have prevented a churned account? Product marketing, super interested in anything having to do with go-to-market messaging, reputation, branding. All of the information that you collect through this process will help inform your go-to-market strategy. Competitive intelligence, any information that you can collect on your competition, products and services, pricing, positioning, how their sales team is going to market. You'll be able to collect that information through this program. And then finally, product management. So anybody who's looking for information about gaps that you might have in your solution or future roadmap, anything that you can really capture to inform the direction of your development efforts going forward. So the first exercise in the worksheet is to capture who you think your top 5 stakeholders are. Of course, you're number 1 on the product marketing side, but who else is in there? Sales leadership, product management, competitive intelligence, customer success. Could it be senior leadership? Maybe you have a VP of pricing, strategy, operations. It really could be many people depending on your organization, how large you are, and who really cares about collecting this information and acting upon it. Now that you've added a couple of people into the stakeholder section of your worksheet, let's move on to the next section. This is a really important point in your discovery process. You're going to actually speak to each one of those stakeholders and collect really important information from them to make sure that your program is really well aligned to their needs, so that when you're providing the output of your efforts, you're helping them answer really important questions that they can act upon and measure. So let's talk about that. A really easy exercise when you schedule time with each one of these stakeholders is to help them fill in a statement. The first part of that statement is if I knew what, right? So if they knew something that they didn't know, what would that something be? The next section is then I could. So if I had that information, this is what I would be able to do with that information. And of course, the last section is really focused on the results. So if they had the information and they did something with that information, what would the ultimate results of that effort be? So what you're able to capture in this statement, in this exercise, is what's most important to them, their purpose, what the outcome they're expecting will be, what that specific action is. And what's really cool about this is that after you've gone through the first round of research, and you've informed your stakeholders and they've acted upon the information you've shared, you can actually come back to what those stakeholders shared at the very beginning and measure the actions that they took as a result, which makes your program that much more important, sticky, and measurable. So this is a really cool exercise. So let's take the head of sales as an example. So if the head of sales knew where their team was struggling, they would be able to provide the support that they need, which would result in a higher win rate. Pretty simple and straightforward. We wanted to provide a relatively general example here, but this can really be as specific as needed based on who it is that you're connecting with. So now that you have an idea of how this works, why don't we go back to your worksheet for exercise number 2, and why don't you fill in that first section, and that first section should really be aligned with you in product marketing. If you knew what is it that you're really missing today? What knowledge do you really not have that you wish you did? The second section, then you could do what with that knowledge. If you're a product marketer, maybe you really need to understand like what materials are people using, what are they reviewing when they're evaluating us, or what's most important to them, or who are they going for advice? Like where are they hearing about us? That kind of stuff would be really relevant here. Then you could do what with that information, which would result in what. So after this session, when you've gone back to your normal day, work day, feel free to reach out to your stakeholders, go through this exercise, and trust me, you'll get a lot of really interesting insight and gold from just this really short exercise. Moving along, now that you've done that with each one of your stakeholders, we have the opportunity to take what you've learned and create these role-specific learning objectives. So using sales again as an example, you recall that the head of sales in this case wanted to know more about where their team was struggling. Were they struggling in their ability to communicate pricing? Were they struggling in their ability to differentiate? Where were they struggling in the sales process? And what you're able to do here is take that if I knew statement and turn it into the sales leadership team's primary learning objective. So in this case, that learning objective is to gain a deeper understanding of where my team is struggling. pretty generic, right? Pretty straightforward. It may be more specific for your sales leader, but we at this point have a good understanding of what type of information would be useful for them. So let's move along. Now that you understand what the learning objective is, that if I statement, you can actually go ahead and enter that into your worksheet. This is exercise number 3. Add that first learning objective in, and when you go back to your stakeholders and have those conversations, you'll be able to fill in the other statements as well. Now, I do have the worksheet URL on each one of these exercise pages. So if you missed it on the first go around, you'll have it here throughout the deck. We have a few more exercises, but it's that bit.ly 2y4 HOMZ URL. All right. Now that you know what the learning objective is, you need questions to be able to support that learning objective. We don't want to just ask random why I won or lost questions. We want to make sure the questions that we're designing really inform that learning objective and help them achieve the goals that they're looking for. It is important to mention here, these questions are not meant to be read verbatim. They're really just guides for the discussion. So if sales leadership is looking for information about why they're struggling, why their sales team or where their sales team might be struggling, the questions that you're asking should be very natural and organic. They shouldn't be rigid and scripted, and be very flexible in your answering methodology. Make sure that you're able to go down deep, probe into second and third level questions if they bring something up of interest. Really, that's where the juice and the fruit of your labor comes in, is when you get into those drill down questions. So here, the learning objective again was gaining a deeper understanding of where the team is struggling. One question might be, hey, how was your sales experience? Tell me a little bit about that. The buyer might share some high level stuff, and then you want to kind of dig deeper into that. Well, tell me more. Why did you say that? Or what could they have done differently or better? In this case, they may tell you that it was an awful experience and you're off to the races. You have great information already. Next question is, what did the team do well? You know, you don't want to go in there with a bunch of questions that are like witch hunt type questions. You want to go in there and you want to have some positive in there. You want to emphasize that this team is strong in their bright spots, but you also want to understand, like, what could they have done a little bit better? Where are the areas of opportunity? So that third question is, what 2 or 3 things could the sales team have done a bit better? Like, what did they do that was good but could have been great, right? And one way that we ask this question is we actually put the buyer in the shoes of the seller's boss. So we ultimately say, if you're the seller's boss, if you were the VP of sales, and that seller came to you, that salesperson came to you and said, hey, what could I have done differently? Give me 2 or 3 pieces of advice. What would you say to that salesperson? And when you position it in that way, the buyer kind of steps into the role of the VP of sales, and they do want to help that salesperson be better. So they come up with a few interesting nuggets if you ask questions in that way. So those are some open-ended questions that you can ask in order to inform that learning objective and help that sales leader get closer to acting upon the data you've collected and having a measurable result. All right, so let's go to exercise number 4. And we can focus once again on you as a product marketer. What was your learning objective? And then what are a few questions that you think might be good to feather in there to get to the heart of your learning objective? Once again, these shouldn't be read verbatim. These are just guide questions. You can ask as many questions as you'd like that aren't written down. That's the goal. You want to just start the conversation, but probe deeper and deeper when the buyer starts to share insight. Once again, the worksheet URL is there on the right. All right, now let's get into some drill down areas. Now, as a product marketer who's collecting qualitative content, you have to kind of figure out what to do with all of that transcript content. It's kind of hard to go through. How do you summarize it? Like, how do you pull out the key points? How do you identify trends? So the first thing that we recommend you do is start thinking about, like, what are the things that you expect to hear from buyers as it relates to these learning objectives? What are the common areas that may come up. And there are certain pockets of areas that are relatively consistent. We have found from company to company. Sales is one of those areas. You may have had a salesperson who provided a really positive or negative experience. Other things that come up quite often are responsiveness or listening skills, ability to handle objections, knowledge of your business, ability to discuss the price in a clear and concise manner and be transparent about that. So if you think through what those themes may be in advance of your interviews and in advance of the program starting, you can start to figure out what your text tags will be when you have to go through and do a textual analysis of the data that comes through the transcripts. So we recommend doing this in advance. Of course, once you get into text coding, you will start to come up with new codes, but this is a good starting point so you don't feel like you're starting from scratch when the text coding process begins. All right, moving along. Now, you can go ahead and put 3 or 4 themes or topics within your worksheet as it relates to product marketing. So whatever your learning objective may have been and the questions that came as a result of that learning objective, what are some themes that you think might come up in advance? So what are the things that you want to put down here that you believe may turn into buckets when you're going through the text coding process a little bit later on? So I'll give you a second to do that. All right, now we're going to go through and talk very, very quickly about conducting, recording, and transcribing interviews. Conducting interviews is an art and a science, and we have a piece that you might like on that particular area, which I'll show you on the next slide. And then recording and transcribing, you can use any tool to do this. You can use Zoom. They have their own transcription capability. We use rev.com. They're human transcribers. They're a bit more expensive, but we want to make sure that accuracy is super important for us. Otter AI is a tool that we've been playing around with lately. So any tool will work. As far as the interviews are concerned, check out this article, 10 Tips for Nailing Your Next Win-Loss Interview. This is based on thousands and thousands of interviews we've conducted over the last 6 years. We've built over 100 win-loss programs. So we have a lot to say about what makes for a great interview, plus third-party research that we've done. So check out that article. I think it will help you prepare for interviews that you'll be conducting. All right, analysis and reporting. This is the fun part for some people. It's challenging for others, but being able once again to look through all of that unstructured data and pulling out really interesting nuggets in a meaningful way can be challenging. But we actually have found a tool recently called Dovetail that we've been using quite a bit, and I'm going to walk you through a short video of how this works. And I recommend you check them out. Dovetail.app, I think, is their email. Their URL. They have a free 7-day trial if you want to sign up. But it's a simple text coding tool that you can use to go through and code your unstructured data. So the way it starts, the way that it starts is you have your transcripts. You build a project within your platform, your home base. You add all of your interview content in here, questions and answers, and then you highlight different sections that align to tags, or you create new tags. If you've been doing this, you can see a lot of your tags are already pre-programmed in there, so it may be a matter of just selecting your tags. Then you go ahead to the chart tool, and you can actually see how all of your tags align with recent wins or losses. If you notice something that stands out, in this case, poor price negotiation stands out, you can click on it and dive down into exactly where those comments were mentioned within the loss interviews that you conducted. Then if you want to send an email to your head of sales, in this case, Sharon, who has that learning objective, she wants to understand where her team was struggling and where she can help by providing training or some sort of enablement resource, you can actually just email Sharon directly. You can send her all of the quotes. You can send her the chart data. that shows that this one area around price negotiation seems to be a place that buyers get stuck and they end up not signing up with you. So she can actually take that information, hand it over to sales enablement, maybe work with pricing, and come up with a strategy to help raise the bar with the sales team, maybe come up with some sort of training or qualification process to make sure that they do better next time. And then on the positive side, strong product demo. So we also want to make sure Sharon understands that there are plenty of bright spots within the sales process. And in this case, the thing that was mentioned most from the buyers was the sales team's ability to demonstrate the solution in a meaningful way that aligned with the needs of each particular buyer. So they contextualized the demo. In some cases, they provided that demo with the wrapper, the design wrapper of the customers that they were selling to, but they were spot on as compared to a lot of the competitors. So we want to make sure Sharon knows that. She can use this for recognition purposes, and she can also use it to help with the sales engineers to make sure that they know how well they're doing. So that's how Dovetail works. One of the outcomes or outputs of the exercise here is that we can come up with a radar chart, can produce it from Dovetail, and you can see that in the top left-hand side, that thing that jumps out was poor price negotiations, and on the positive side, in the bottom there, strong product demos. So it's very clear what's trending within this particular set of data. All right, now that we've done all this work, we've understood the purpose of each stakeholder, we've identified the stakeholder, their learning objective, questions, the tags, conducted the interviews, we've tagged and coded the interviews, we've come up with visuals. Now we can actually present all of that data back to each one of the stakeholders, and from there, we can actually have a different conversation with them. Now that I know that the team struggles during price negotiations, I can now create and deliver tools, training, and role plays, which will result in a more effective negotiation process and a higher win rate. So we've come full circle here with this program, and now we're able to show all of the fruits of your labor in a very meaningful way by stakeholder, making your program super important to each person that you're aligned with within your organization. So on Monday, there are 3 things that you can do immediately. The first one is finish completing your program plan. You have access to the Google Sheet for as long as you'd like. You can download it, customize it. The next thing is select a few recent deals to interview. Try to identify who they are and start the process of outreach. Get them into the queue. The next and final step here is email us if you need any help through this process. You know, we're all about making sure that you're setting this program up internally in the right way. And I know that you'll have questions along the way, and we're here for you. So feel free to shoot us a note at info@doublecheckresearch.com, and one of our team members would be happy to assist you. And that's it. And I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining. I know there are so many different sessions at this particular event. Thanks for making the time to come to mine. Hope this was valuable, and feel free to reach out to me at Ryan Sorley at doublecheckresearch.com. Have a great rest of your day.